Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of influencer Belle Gibson and the scandal that went down around her and her various collection of claimed illnesses. More on that in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. Alright, since this is the first video that I have done on the Belle Gibson case, I have done a large amount of research beforehand to be able to present to you a fairly comprehensive overview of everything about the case that I could track down, any of the deceit that she showed, any of the patterns that she had, anything that she presented online, everything that can add extra information for us. There's a fair bit to this, so I suggest you go ahead and buckle up. This will be a two-part video so that we can have some manageable lengths here. But with that being said, Belle Gibson, born in 1991, grew up in Australia and later became known as a charismatic wellness blogger. She often painted a dramatic picture of her childhood, claiming she had to care for her sick mother who had multiple sclerosis and an autistic brother from a young age in Brisbane. According to Belle's own account, she essentially raised herself, even saying she never knew her father and had to handle household chores and duties as a child by herself. However, her family strongly disputes this narrative. In a media interview, Belle's mother flatly denied those stories, calling them a lot of rubbish, and said Belle never actually looked after her or her brother, and that in fact the family had provided Belle with a very comfortable upbringing. This early contradiction hinted at Gibson's complicated relationship with the truth. In her teens, Gibson struggled with formal education. She dropped out of high school around year 10, roughly the age of 14 to 15, and then by 18 she became a mother. By her own telling, she left home early and forged an independent life, which later became part of her public persona as a resilient young mom. There is evidence that she moved around Australia in her youth, living in Perth for a time and then settling in Melbourne. These early life details are honestly fairly difficult to verify fully, given Belle's tendency to exaggerate or contradict herself, but they do set the stage for the narrative that she would later use to captivate millions, the image of a tough, self-reliant survivor. In 2009, at just 20 years old, Belle Gibson claimed she received earth-shattering news, a terminal brain cancer diagnosis. According to Gibson, doctors told her that she had weeks to months to live. She would later recount in her book and in interviews that she underwent chemotherapy and radiotherapy for about 2 months, but then dramatically abandoned conventional treatment. Gibson said that she chose to heal herself naturally, adopting a strict diet free of gluten and dairy and relying on alternative therapies like oxygen therapy and colonics and embracing a holistic lifestyle. By her account, these remedies halted her cancer in its tracks. This astonishing story of self-cure became the bedrock of her brand. In mid-2013, Belle took her message to social media. She launched an Instagram account under the handle @healing_Belle, where she chronicled her journey as a young mother fighting terminal cancer through healthy living. The timing was perfect. The wellness movement and fascination with superfoods was on the rise at the time, and Belle's story was inspirational and dramatic. Her following exploded. She amassed over 200,000 followers within 1 year. Gibson's post offered clean eating recipes, positivity, and frequent updates on her health. Followers were drawn to this image of a vibrant young woman who seemingly conquered more or less a death sentence with green smoothies and determination. Riding that wave of popularity, Belle Gibson expanded into tech and publishing. She developed a mobile application called The Whole Pantry, a combined recipe and wellness app which launched in 2013. The app was an instant hit. It reportedly garnered 200,000 downloads in its first month on the Apple App Store. Apple even named the whole pantry as the best food and drink app of 2013. The success of the app led to a book deal with Penguin's Lantern imprint. In October of 2014, Gibson's cookbook, The Whole Pantry, was released, offering healthy recipes and lifestyle tips echoing her cancer survival story. By this time, her business ventures, the app, and the book, along with speaking engagements, had generated a significant amount of revenue, around about $420,000 by one of the estimates. Gibson carefully cultivated her wellness warrior image. She wasn't just selling recipes, she was selling her personal story of triumph over illness. Major media outlets and brands amplified her fame. In late 2014, Cosmopolitan magazine honored her with a Fun Fearless Female Award, and another hailed her as one of the year's most inspiring women. Even Apple invited her to be a part of their launch for the new Apple Watch, planning to pre-install the Whole Pantry app on the new device. Belle Gibson appeared to be on an unstoppable rise. A celebrated influencer who had credibility in both the wellness community and the tech startup world, all built on her miraculous cancer survival tale. However, a core part of Gibson's brand and appeal was not just that she had survived cancer, but that she was giving back. She often claimed that the proceeds from her app and book and events would all be donated to charities and individuals in need. For instance, she pledged donations to various cancer charities and to the family of a boy with brain cancer, tying her product sales to altruistic causes. This philanthropic angle endeared her followers. Buying Belle's app or book wasn't just helping yourself, it was supposedly also supposed to be helping others. Unfortunately, as would soon be revealed, these charitable promises were just as fraudulent as her health claims. By early 2015, cracks began to form in Belle Gibson's story. Journalists at the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age received tips that Gibson's charity claims didn't actually add up at all. In March of 2015, investigative reporters Bo Donnelly and Nick Toscano dug in and discovered that several charities Belle had named had actually received no money from her at all. Public questions mounted. Where did all of that charity money go? Under scrutiny, Gibson delayed and made excuses, but the pressure was on. The tide of public opinion turned almost overnight from admiration to suspicion. Facing growing allegations, Belle Gibson agreed to do an interview with the Australian Women's Weekly in April of 2015, which became infamous. In that interview, Gibson finally admitted that she had never really actually had cancer at all. When point blank asked if her claims about cancer were false, she quietly responded, "No, none of it is true." She confessed that she had fabricated her entire medical saga. Gibson offered vague explanations saying, "I'm still jumping between what I think I know and what is reality," and claimed she had been influenced by misguided alternative practitioners. She also claimed, "I don't want forgiveness. It was the responsible thing to do," referring to coming clean. The Weekly's journalist noted that Belle muddles her words and doesn't really understand how cancer in general even works, suggesting Gibson might suffer from a psychological disorder like Munchausen syndrome, a compulsion to fake illnesses. The public was stunned. A wellness icon admitted she had lied about basically everything. After this bombshell revelation, Belle Gibson's entire empire collapsed quickly. Her publisher pulled the Whole Pantry cookbook from shelves, Apple scrapped the plan to feature her app on the new devices, and even removed it from the App Store. Gibson's social media accounts and online presence all but vanished as she retreated from public view. Meanwhile, Australia's consumer protection authorities took action. By mid-2015, Consumer Affairs Victoria had begun investigating Gibson. In May of 2016, the CAV formally announced legal action against Belle Gibson under Australian consumer law. The case, Director of Consumer Affairs Victoria versus Gibson, was eventually heard out in the Federal Court of Australia. Belle Gibson did not contest the case. She and her company, which had undergone multiple name changes, failed to even appear in court to defend themselves. In March of 2017, federal court justice Debbie Mortimer delivered a scathing judgment, finding Gibson had unequivocally engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct under the Australian consumer law. The court confirmed that all of Gibson's key representations were, in fact, false. She had never had brain cancer, never been on death's doorstep, nor cured herself naturally, and she had misled consumers by claiming to donate to charity. In September of 2017, the federal court handed down penalties. Belle Gibson was ordered to pay a $410,000 fine for 5 breaches of consumer law. Each breach corresponded to a particular false claim in her marketing, such as the promised charity donations from app sales and the events. The court also issued injunctions forbidding Gibson from making any cancer-related claims in any business venture moving forward. In addition, she was ordered to pay $30,000 in legal costs to Consumer Affairs Victoria. Justice Mortimer did not mince words in her written decision, stating that Belle had repeatedly put her own interests first. To quote her, "If there is one theme or pattern which emerges through her conduct, it is her relentless obsession with herself and what best serves her interests." The judge also continued, calling Gibson's conduct unconscionable. Despite the hefty penalties, enforcing them actually proved difficult. Gibson never voluntarily paid the $410,000 that she owed. By 2018, authorities were hauling her back to court to examine her finances, warning she could face jail time for defying the court order. In 2019, Gibson appeared in federal court and claimed she was financially unable to pay what she owed. Official investigations into her bank records told a very different story, however. Between 2017 and 2019, after the verdict, Belle had spent at least $90,000 on travel, shopping, and even cryptocurrencies instead of making literally any effort to pay the fine. This prompted enforcement raids on her property. The Victoria Sheriff's Office raided Gibson's home in January of 2020 and again in May of 2021, seizing luxury items in an attempt to regain the debt that Gibson owed. Gibson's case thus dragged on for years after the initial judgment. As of the latest reports in 2025, she still has not paid the majority of the fine. Victorian authorities insist that they will not let up on pursuing her for the money, viewing it as a matter of principle given the brazenness of her scam. Essentially, Belle Gibson faced financial ruin and public disgrace, but stopped short of any criminal charges or prison time. Her punishments have been civil fines, injunctions, and a more or less shattered reputation. Now I'll try to do my best to summarize the collection of lies that Gibson told throughout the years. However, as much of what she spoke was either fully deceitful or at least partially misleading, it definitely muddied my proverbial waters of research as I struggled to be able to figure out what was fact and what was fiction. From what I discovered, Belle Gibson's deception was elaborate, involving a web of lies told over several years. Investigators and journalists later uncovered a trail of falsehoods. These are just some of the major lies and inconsistencies Gibson told, each verified through either court findings or credible reports. The first one was the terminal cancer diagnosis. Gibson claimed she was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2009 and given only a few months to live. In truth, she never had any form of brain cancer or cancer in general. This initial lie laid the foundation for her entire persona and business. Another one she told was the miraculous self-cure that she had. She insisted that after being told her cancer was incurable, she rejected chemotherapy and conventional medicine to heal herself through nutrition and alternative therapies. She promoted this false cure story to inspire others despite it having actually no basis in reality or medicine at all. Another lie she told was the multiple relapses and illnesses. To maintain sympathy and intrigue, Gibson didn't stop at her one cancer claim. In mid-2014 or so, she told her followers that her cancer had indeed returned and had spread to multiple organs, including her blood, spleen, brain, uterus, and liver, as she wrote in a dramatic Instagram post. This, too, was a complete fabrication. There were no records anywhere in any medical facility to support any single one of these alleged cancers or relapses. Another lie she told was the fictitious surgeries and near-death experiences. Gibson lied about other health crises, claiming she had undergone multiple heart surgeries and that at one point she had even died on the operating table before being revived. These sensational stories had actually no truth to them at all. They appeared to be attempts to bolster her image as someone who had been through it all, further drawing on public sympathy and perhaps deflecting doubters. Another lie that she told was the charitable donations that never actually happened. A central pillar of Belle's public image was her promise to give to charity in a very generous manner. She repeatedly claimed that a significant portion of the revenue from the Whole Pantry app and book would go to the various charities, and that she was fundraising for sick children and causes and such. In reality, though, those donations were negligible. From the over $420,000 in earnings she had, she donated at most maybe $10,000, roughly 2%, to charity. Most named charities received nothing at all until journalists exposed the truth. This discrepancy between promise and reality was a key factor in the court determining she had intentionally misled her consumers. Another lie was her age and identity confusion. In the fallout of the scandal during a televised interview, actually the one that we'll be analyzing today, Belle even gave inconsistent answers about basic facts like her age and her name. She had long presented herself as a few years younger than she actually was. When pressed on 60 Minutes about her real age, she bizarrely responded, "That's probably a question we'll have to keep digging for," refusing to confirm it. She also hinted that she changed her name several times. These odd lies, though not as consequential as the health and charity fraud, really did contribute to the sense that Belle had built her entire life and persona on various layers of deceit. Each of these false claims was documented in either court findings or contemporary reporting. Together, they reveal how thoroughly Gibson deceived her audience, her business partners, and the media. She fabricated illnesses, cures, altruistic acts, even biographical details, crafting an almost entirely fictional persona that fooled many for many years. The case has prompted extensive analysis about why she lied and what damage that caused. Many observers have tried to understand Gibson's psychology. Some medical experts suspect that she might suffer from a form of Munchausen syndrome by internet, a psychological disorder where individuals feign illnesses online to get attention and sympathy. Gibson herself has never been formally diagnosed with a public mental disorder, but the consistent pattern of elaborate health lies definitely fits that profile fairly well. Others believe her actions were perhaps more calculating than that, essentially fraud for profit, leveraging a false story to build a business. It's possible that both attention-seeking and greed played roles in her behavior. As one cancer researcher bluntly put it, Belle got rich and famous by exploiting people's empathy. Her lies were irresponsible and dangerous, giving false hope and potentially leading seriously ill people away from proven treatments for those illnesses. Healthcare professionals widely condemned Gibson's claims. Doctors noted that her purported cancer cure regime had literally no scientific basis for treating cancer as aggressively as what she claimed it did. Cancer organizations feared that some patients might have followed Belle's example, foregoing chemotherapy or other needed treatment in favor of unproven diets or natural supplements. They warned that Gibson's story underscored the destructive harms of false health claims on social media. People who believed her could have been misled into making dangerous health decisions. In the end, Gibson's influence likely did not cause direct deaths that we know of, but it did undeniably sow confusion and false hope in vulnerable patients. The incident became a cautionary tale in public health circles about the reach of wellness influencers and the urgent need to verify medical claims. Public reaction to Belle Gibson's unmasking was fairly intense. Followers who had admired her felt betrayed, and many expressed anger, especially cancer patients and their families for whom Belle had been a beacon of hope. Social media and talk shows in 2015 were flooded with outrage. Some people even directed vitriol and abuse at her, reflecting how personally wounded they were by her lies. This backlash grew so fierce that others cautioned against pile-on, noting that Gibson was still a young woman who likely needed some form of mental help. Still, the overwhelming public sentiment was that Belle Gibson's deception was unforgivable given its scope. Journalists and commentators also reflected on how the media and corporations enabled Gibson for a time. The Australian Woman's Weekly, in a retrospective, pointed out big businesses quickly cashed in on her story, and that multiple organizations eagerly promoted Belle's narrative without doing any fact-checking with it. Magazines, publishers, and Apple all helped amplify an unverified story because it was profitable and inspiring. Until it fell apart. This aspect of the saga has spurred media outlets to be a little bit more cautious when vetting extraordinary health claims. As academic observers noted, Belle's rise happened in the flourishing but largely unregulated wellness industry, where glossy influencers can gain trust without the checks and balances of traditional medical claims. Even years later, the Belle Gibson case resonates as a stark example of influencer fraud. In 2023 through 2025, a Netflix dramatization of her story called Apple Cider Vinegar renewed discussion of the case, and Australian authorities used the moment to reiterate that they are constantly working to recover her unpaid fines. The Victorian Premier publicly voiced disappointment that Gibson has yet to face full consequences, reinforcing that regulators won't let up in holding her accountable. Meanwhile, the public's trust in wellness influencers has become more cautious. Belle Gibson's name has become synonymous with health fraud in Australia, a reminder that if something sounds too good to be true, like curing a terminal cancer with a diet alone, it likely is just that. In hindsight, experts suggest a few positive outcomes from the saga. Consumer protection laws proved capable of punishing such fraud, even if enforcing it has been a little bit slow. The case also educated the public about fake illness scams and encouraged more skepticism towards online health claims. As one Guardian analysis wrote, the Belle Gibson story forced a conversation about Munchausen by internet and the vulnerability of online communities to elaborate lies. It stands as a lesson to verify health advice with qualified professionals. The story of Belle Gibson is a cautionary tale at the intersection of health, social media, and trust. She went from being celebrated as an inspirational wellness guru to being denounced as a con artist. In the span of just a few years, Gibson built an empire on lies and saw it crumble under the weight of truth. Her early life antidotes, cancer miracle claims, charitable pledges, and even basic personal facts all proved to be falsifications or gross exaggerations. Through official court action, we learned the full extent of her deception, and she was held to account with substantial fines and public shame. Yet, the enduring frustration is that Belle Gibson never truly apologized in a way that convinced people, nor fully paid the price for the harm that she caused, financially or morally. For the millions who followed her, Belle Gibson's case was a betrayal. But it also served as an educational moment. It reminded everyone that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. As engaging as Belle's fabricated story was, the real story of how she fooled the world and was finally exposed is a sobering one. It's a story of accountability, catching up to deceit, and of lessons learned the hard way about whom we choose to believe. That's all of the backstory that I was able to collect. I hope that this can give you enough contextual information before we begin into this actual analysis. So let's go ahead, turn on my iPad, and we'll get started.
My name is Dr. Peter Ashkar. I am a forensic psychologist. People like Belle find it hard to speak the truth, partly because on some level, they probably lack the insight into their own behaviour, but also because they tend to be very tightly controlled and defensive, not take responsibility for their actions, play the victim, and simply not be transparent with what motivates their behaviour. In my opinion, what motivates Belle Gibson is a strong need for attention and external validation. I suspect she probably has very low self-esteem, and she needs that external validation to feel good about herself.
So I did want to go ahead and start with that little clip from the psychologist there to be able to add even more context from other experts as we walk into this. Being able to see those patterns of needing attention from the people around, many have thrown out the concept of Belle being a narcissist, having one of these twisted views of the world that enable them to search after attention at such extreme levels that even go against what would be considered societal or psychological norms and can lead to problematic behaviors. So with that in mind, as we continue into the rest of this interview, we'll be keeping our eye out for some of the patterns that fall into these various categories, and also seeing if there are any other things that might slip through that give us extra information that we might not have anticipated. Let's go ahead and go.
Good morning.
So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Please sit down. Yeah, I'm just gonna tissues. I'm going to cry. I was going to say, meeting mic'd up.
No, just if you sit there.
Oh,
That's a great sweater you got there, Belle.
oh, thank you. I was just like, what makes me feel most comfortable? And I put on like my work clothes. I'm like, no.
Just got to put this on in front of your face.
Okay.
A, B, C, D.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause there. That's a lot of information that we're gathering without there being an intentional question or anything that she's feeling like she's already being a part of the interview yet. And so what I've noticed nonverbally with her is she does have a tendency to start stuttering and stammering over her words when she starts to feel nervous. Along with that, she might also do a nervous laugh that doesn't reach her eyes. These two are very common indicators of anxiety and nerves, but to be able to see them already presented here, it lets us know that we can work off of those throughout the rest of the interview as she's performed them in an area that's not performative. She's not expecting people to want her to behave a specific way quite yet. We're still getting ready for everything, talking about our shirts, blah, blah, blah. So we're understanding a little bit about her here, and there will be a fair bit to unpack as we go through.
Belle, are you prepared to tell the truth today? The whole
Yeah,
truth? No little
absolutely.
truths, no gobbledygook. The truth.
No, I've been really transparent about what has happened and what has happened since.
Gonna go ahead and pause here. So, do you promise to tell the truth? And she says, yeah. She does her initial response to it. She has a prolonged eye blink in there, which is questionable to me. Maybe it's a resignation, like, yeah, you can see that come in. It could also be the separation, the subconscious desire to separate oneself from what's being said that is negative. It could be a lie. It could just be a negative thing. You'll see that prolonged eye blink coming in there. There's that possibility. To kind of back that up a little bit more, when she goes further into it, she does a micro nose shake while she's reiterating that she'll say nothing but the truth. Now that little micro nose shake in there is complicated. It could be referring to the you wouldn't believe, but it also could be desynchronized. It's quite small. It's less likely to be controlled. Again, if you're new here, that is one of the general rules of thumb of nonverbal communication. The smaller the movement, the more likely it is to be subconscious. The larger it is, the easier it is to consciously control. So it was a fairly micro movement no while she's saying that she will tell the truth. And so seeing the eye blink and that little micro movement no in there, to me, it's not a real strong start to this interview, especially even considering the context that we know. But non-verbally speaking, without knowing that context, it's still just not a strong start. Let's see how this actually plays out throughout it.
So just for clarification, are you prepared to sign a statutory declaration to say that everything you tell me today is the truth?
Absolutely. There's nothing left to lose. And if that requires a stat deck, then I'm comfortable with that.
Gonna go ahead and pause that here. Again, the absolutely came in there. She used that absolutely phrasing earlier with the micro no. Now we're seeing it again with a micro no in the same area. Like, are you prepared to tell the truth? And she's like, I have some questions about that. We're also seeing some movements across the upper half of her face as she's drawing her eyebrows together. And this could be in a form of aggression. It could also be in the form of confusion. And if she's trying to pull the what I term as the like outrageous face, where you see somebody widen their eyes and draw their eyebrows together, and it's kind of always centered around this like, oh, you wouldn't, maybe that sort of attitude. She's trying to show that it's outrageous, that it would even be implied that she might lie about some of these things, which I just find hilarious considering the context. But it does highlight pretty quickly what Belle's mindset is. Even from the very beginning, she's trying to show that it's outrageous that she would do anything other than tell the truth, when throughout all of the rest of her history, she has done anything but tell the truth. The patterns are fascinating. This has been a difficult case to work through.
I guess why a stat dec is required is because you don't have a good record on telling the truth. Do you know what the definition of truth is?
Yes.
What's your definition of truth?
Speaking with honesty and with clear definition around fact.
And what's your definition of a lie?
I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. I do adore how well the interviewer handles herself in this. All of her questions are very calmly presented and give no space for BS, which I appreciate. That needs to happen a lot more in interviews, and she does so fantastically. It's basically a masterclass on how to not take crap from somebody who just, that's what they speak. They're just so used to it. As we're seeing again in Belle's expression of things, she's trying to show this level of outrageousness in regards to the truth. Again, she's acting as if she hasn't had a history of years of blatantly lying about very severe things. She's trying to act like that doesn't exist and just be like, I don't even know why you would ask me what the truth is. It all goes to hammer home that she truly wants to manipulate people at her very core, regardless sometimes of even if she's aware of it, which still does push to various mental conditions that could help add some clarity to that. Since I'm not a psychologist, I'm not going to try to do that. But it does seem interesting at the very least behaviorally. As we continue through this, just try to take as much joy in how the interviewer handles this as well, because yeah, it is a delight. Let's continue.
Well, obviously the opposite of that.
A false statement made with deliberate intent to deceive, an intentional untruth, a falsehood.
And I've not been intentionally untruthful. I've been openly conveying and speaking.
I just wanted to pause it there. I haven't been intentionally untruthful. I have been openly, and in my brain I'm like, you've been openly untruthful. You're right. So during this, again, this outrage, and it seems as though Belle might not be able to grasp the fact that she has been so horrifically deceitful to so many people, which again kind of pushes towards a mental condition. However, not to make an excuses for the adult behavior that she is carrying out with a fully developed adult brain. These are things that should not be done, and so her outrage in this is like, oh, I was also a victim, is a fascinating facet of this, is that desire in even a situation where she has been nothing but damaging to the people around her, she still tries to find a way to make herself a victim, to come out as somebody who was also hurt by her own behavior. She would not have been hurt by anybody had she not done the behavior that she did, the way that she did it. And so she's unwilling to accept that responsibility while also still trying to paint herself out to be a victim. These are all very complicated and fascinating behavioral tendencies. Let's keep watching.
Speaking about what was my reality and what is my reality today.
Do you accept the level of damage you've done to people's trust?
I do. And they are feeling disrespected. They are feeling...
I'm gonna pause it there. I do. And you hear at the end of that I do, one, pitch increase, and then force behind the words drops off. When you hear a pitch increase, that's just tightness in the muscles. That could be because of nervousness. It can be because of happiness. It can be because of whatever, not the least of which it can also be because of telling a lie. You could be feeling a little bit nervous about being caught out in that lie, which would cause that pitch to increase. And then along with that, as you have a lack of confidence, you're not going to project your words as solidly, so she falls off on that I do. And it's airy, light, pitch up. I don't believe it. I don't believe that for honestly a second. And then as she's going through afterwards, you'll hear her offer qualifiers to it that somehow still shirk responsibility.
They are feeling hurt. They are feeling betrayed.
And your whole trade was on these poor people. That you inspired them, that they felt sorry for you, that you showed them a path. I mean, you profited from that. You gained from that in reputation and in income.
I didn't trade in my story
Yes,
or in
you did.
other people's lives.
You did trade in your story. Belle, it's all here.
It is
It's
there.
all here. You know, you go on Instagram in 2013. I have been healing a severe and malignant brain cancer for the past.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. Non-verbally speaking, what we're seeing now is a lot of shutting down of the face. She's freezing, and to me, this indicates that she's getting closer and closer to this point of she feels she's not in control of this situation, so she's starting to panic a little bit. And from here, people with her specific personality types, you can often see an attempt at a regaining of control in some method or another. Now, as she has a habit of presenting herself to be a victim, presenting herself to have some sort of wrongdoing towards her, it would be likely that she would then try to regain control by amplifying her victimhood. It would be in the form of a cry, it would be in the form of an outburst. We have seen it in multiple interviews where people will stand up and they'll be raging and yelling and things like that. We've seen it in interviews where people have wanted to leave the deal. We've seen it where they want to cry. There's any form of these attempts to retake control in an area where they felt that they've lost control. So as we've gone through this, the interviewer's doing fantastic, just laying on the questions and statements, not giving any leeway, not giving in to the manipulation, sticking to it. And when a manipulation comes out, she's quick to call it out and lay out the facts instead. And you see it non-verbally affecting Belle as she's shutting down more and more and more and more and more. And I'm sure it's going to end up escalating from here. Let's see.
Cancer for the past few years with natural medicine, Gerson therapy and foods. It's working for me.
It is. And if
Except
any,
you didn't have brain cancer.
no, I didn't.
No.
But when I was writing that, I thought that I did, and I was feeling well.
Yes, but even then you misrepresented what you thought was your truth, which was all a big lie. Anyway.
I just appreciate no leeway, none. Oh, but I did this. Not true, you did this. Oh, but what about this? Not the case, this is what happened. It's so beautiful, and you see it start to affect Belle more and more and more. We're gonna start seeing more emotional seepage come out of her, and likely in the realm of aggression and or manipulation through tears, because she's losing control, and when she tries to regain control or state one of her partial truths or manipulations, she's stopped instantly. So she's trying to say it did help me, and you didn't have cancer. You never had cancer, so it couldn't help you because you didn't have it. Again, it's very frustrating to listen to somebody who their entire sole purpose is just to get attention and sympathy and victimhood from the people around, oftentimes at the cost of people that are actually suffering. It's a really, really gross manipulation in my opinion. So I have a lot of difficulty approaching this with a little bit more of a level head because I don't appreciate that. If you don't take advantage of the people that are already having a difficult time. Like just, all right, you know?
Anyway.
I'm really sorry. And it hurts me, and I beat myself up every day for how I have hurt.
Pausing here, and now we're seeing a different manipulation approach. So she starts by doing a very aggressive, I'm really sorry. We see that. She leans forward, her eyes draw together, she lowers her head down, I'm really sorry. She's proving a point with that one, I'm really sorry. And then she shifts into, I'm a victim. It's really hurt me. It's been really hard for how I've felt. Me this, me that, me this, me that. And you see immediately on the interviewer's face, you see a partial disgust and contempt coming in there. And then you see a sigh of exasperation as well. The interviewer immediately sees through all of this, which is beautiful. It's fantastic. But again, we're seeing Belle trying to manipulate to regain control of a situation where she's not in control of. And this is how she built her little empire that she had, is through the control via manipulation. And it's just not working here, and it's beautiful to watch her unravel.
Those who mean a lot to me.
You're still alive after being told you wouldn't
Can we
be?
have a minute? Because I'm feeling really belittled.
I'm not belittling you. I'm actually trying to understand.
Take 3, second clap.
Set. And recording.
Okay. Do you take responsibility?
There's the escalation of it all. Now we've had the explosion. Now Belle is like, I'm gonna take control and I'm gonna do so through tears and through manipulation in that. I'm feeling belittled. Everybody else stop. Even the interviewer's like, I'm not trying to belittle you. I'm trying to get to the truth. That's the goal of this. But Belle's sensing that, well, one, the truth isn't going to be beneficial to her. And two, she's losing control of this interview. She never had it, but she's sensing it now. And so you can see here, it's like watching her go through index cards of how to manipulate. Oh, well, I'll try making an excuse. Oh, well, I'll try being aggressive. Oh, well, I will try crying. Oh, well, I will try shifting blame. It's like watching somebody go through a notebook of things they have done on repeat in their life, but it's not working, and I have the utmost appreciation for the interviewer for doing so.
Do you take responsibility for driving any people away from conventional medicine in seeking treatment for their cancer?
That would be really heartbreaking to me because I never intended on doing that.
Do you accept that that's what you might have done?
I accept that might have happened. I was not an expert in anyone else.
So again, do you accept responsibility? That would be so hurtful because I didn't want to, again, it's an immediate attempt to shell off responsibility, to shirk it off to the side, and to make some sort of excuse, and not the least of which, not only make an excuse, but to make an excuse that, again, she can be perceived as a victim, a misunderstood individual. I never intended on doing that. You should feel sorry for me that I did something that was apparently misinterpreted. So immediately, again, she finds a way to have a question that should be in regards to being able to be more honest and open to the people around her about what she did, taking responsibility. And instead of doing that, she tries to hand it off and then manipulate. It's a very clear pattern of behavior here. We're getting a very solid understand of how Belle Gibson behaves and how they think.
I was not an expert in anyone else's health. And
Excuse me, but don't be naive now. I mean, you are appealing to an incredibly vulnerable audience, incredibly vulnerable people.
Mm-hmm.
You have a responsibility to make sure your story is right.
I'm not trying to get away with anything. I'm not trying to smooth over anything.
Well,
it's not easy for me to be here. It's not easy for me to relive and relive and relive detail.
That's where I'm gonna go ahead and pause that before I start actually causing damage. So during that, you could see her again. I'm not trying to get away with anything. Absolute lie again. That's all that she's done so far is try to get away with stuff. And I'm not trying to twist any opinion. Immediately again, interviewer, you can see it. Disgust. You see the lip compression and tight-lipped smile in there. All of these indicating that no, none of what you're trying to spit out here is landing. You're not going to manipulate this situation. You're done. You're done manipulating. That's this first little blip of this interview. I have the next part ready to go, and I will go ahead and do part 2 of this video series. So if you did like this and you have some thoughts on the case, especially that you would like to be able to get in before the next video comes out, please let me know in the comments of this video. Perhaps there's something that I missed in the background research of this. There's a lot to try to comb through, so I feel like I would be pretty remiss if I thought that I nailed everything perfectly. So if there's anything that I did miss, I tried my best, but let me know. If you have any other requests for other videos or things like that, again, the comments is a good place to be able to do that. I'll try to be able to get to as many of them as I can. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.